Hey y'all, Daniel Aaron here, your guide to vibrant living. And feedback, I'm not talking about feedback as in, well actually that kind too. I was thinking of the sound that comes, when the microphone isn't working quite right, the levels aren't quite right. Because that kind of feedback is actually very helpful, because what it does is very immediately gives a strong sensation, something is wrong, and it needs to be fixed right away. Feedback is a way of getting information. First though, perhaps what you really came for. And that is this. Why did the Buddhist monk never vacuum clean underneath his sofa? Because he had no attachments. And yes, it does sort of fit our theme for today. I years ago learned a exercise. Oh, hey, excellent, we're back. Going to a different location to see if that would give us a little better connection. All right, we're back. And the exercise was this. I learned it, and then I so appreciated it that I've used it dozens of times with groups that I've led. And it's called hot seat, although of course there are many hot seat exercises out there. And the way it works is like this, and I'm not necessarily leading you into it right now or even suggesting you do it. So you might be curiously listening as to how this could be beneficial for you right now. Because is it possible or even likely that if I am telling you this story, it's for a reason that could be of direct benefit for you right now? Yes. And each person has a chance to sit on the hot seat. Each person is required to sit on the hot seat, sitting in a circle group of people. And when you're on the hot seat, you're sitting in a position like this, your palms up and you're open and you're receptive, as in you're not like this, you're just receiving. And then each person around the hot seat says at least one thing that they don't like about you. Right? And when I've introduced this part of the exercise to groups before, I've gotten such criticism and attack from some people. That is not yogic, that is not spiritual, that is not kind, I'm not going to do that, that's horrible, why would you ever do something like that? All totally understandable, valid concerns and reactions to it. And I'll explain why you would and why we did and why every single time I've done this exercise myself, which has been many, many times, and with groups and with our leadership teams, and every time I've facilitated it for others where they have come to the point of like, wow, that was amazing, thank you. One, we are so uncomfortable to share something that's unpleasant or we think might hurt someone, or more accurately, we think might cause them to judge us or not like us, right? Understandable. And we've gotten so careful and concerned about that we will lie frequently or withhold the truth, and that may be the same thing, in order not to say something that's unpleasant. And it comes at a great cost to ourselves and to the other person. Now, when you're on the hot seat and you hear people saying things about you that they don't like about you, a few different possibilities occur. One is they can say something they don't like about you and you go, huh, that's weird, I love that thing about me. Or they could say something they don't like about you and you say, yeah, you know what, I don't like that about myself either. Or they could say something that they don't like about you and you go, what's your problem? And, fight against it. Or they could say something and you say, oh yeah, that's true, I'm horrible, I'm an awful person. Right? And any of those things are opportunities for information to see, not so much even what they have to say, the content of it, see what our response is, what our reaction is. If we fight against it, then almost for sure there's something valuable in it for us. If we agree too vehemently about it, again, almost for sure there's something important for us to learn from it. And if a few people say the same thing, well, there's probably something to it. The great thing, the amazing thing though, is that we get to be the artist of our own creation ourselves. That's our ultimate art piece. And so as the artist, and I learned this first from writing and getting feedback about my writing, it's always up to the artist to make the choice. People could say, hey, your narrator is too grumpy, or your narrator's too nice. And then you always have the option of saying, well, you know what, that's by design, that's how I want that narrator to be. Or you might say, yeah, you know what, I think I will listen to that feedback and choose myself to make a difference, to do it differently. And that's the thing, that's what's great about the feedback, is it gives us information and allows us the choice of what we can do with our lives. Because before we got that information, we might not have known, or we might not have felt it or associated to it in a way. All right, now, that's just round one. Each person has a chance sitting in the hot seat, and every person must say something, at least one thing, and you keep going until you come to a natural conclusion where there's nothing left to be said. Now, for the person speaking, what we find is this is actually an exchange of energy. This is actually an act of generosity from your heart. It's not like you're trying to attack them or hurt them. From your heart, saying, I'm saying this thing that I don't like. One, because it might be useful to you. Two, because it might be in the way of us and our harmony. So I want to clear this out of the way so that what remains is love and truth and clarity between us. And especially when it's scary, it's an act of courage as well as generosity. And when everybody's finished, and I'm going fast through all of this, by the way. If I was actually leading this to a live group, we would go slower and I would explain more and maybe talk about these things. So if it's a little bit rushed, you can, one, listen again, watch again. And also if you got questions or comments, just let me know. That's cool too. And when the round is complete, that person who's been on the hot seat, their only response is to say, thank you. And then they move off the hot seat. And what happens then for most people is there's a swirl of stuff going on. I remember the very first time I did this, one of the things somebody said to me is, I don't like the way you care for your feet, or don't take care of your feet. I was astonished. Like, what? Really? Who cares? But you know what happened for me afterwards is, not surprisingly, next time I was alone with my naked feet, I looked at them and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't actually like the way I take care of them either. And that led me to taking better care of my feet. It was valuable feedback. Not necessarily earth-shattering changes to my life, though, and it was symbolic of a way of working with feedback. And part of what's valuable about this, not necessarily that you're going to do this exercise, but if we are able to, and we are, shift our way of working with feedback, what people share with us, what they tell us, what life tells us in terms of what's working, what's not working, how people respond. Like in NLP, there's a great truism that the measure of any communication is the response you get. And so we find out, well, was the response something that was what I wanted? Was it useful? Did I communicate well what I wanted? Anyway, if we are able to shift our way of working with feedback, it gives us, well, one, a greater security and confidence in ourselves. And this is one of the things that shocked me when I first did this hot seat exercise, is by the end of it, and there's a whole 2 more rounds that I'll explain to you that are very different. By the end of it, I felt in myself like more loving toward the people I was with. I felt more confident, even though I'd heard things about myself that they didn't like, and some of which I didn't like either. I felt better about myself, right? It didn't make any sense. And as we learn to utilize feedback, we can say, you know what? I'm great. And hey, you know what? These are some attitudes or some behaviors or some ways of taking care of my feet that I might want to change, that I can change. And it doesn't reflect on who I am, my inherent divinity and beauty and worthiness. And as we practice that, we get to more and more clearly understand that nothing can ever sully or dirty the perfection that we are. And here we are in this earth plane, and we get to play around with finding better ways of loving each other and achieving and creating. All right. For your completion, I'll tell you, the second round, after everybody's had a chance on the hot seat, then everybody gets up and shakes it out. Just kind of like state changes. You might know it that way, and just get it all out, anything that's stuck in there. And then third round is very much like the first round. Each person has a chance on the hot seat, and then everybody else must say at least one thing that they love about that person. And oftentimes when people get to this exercise, they say, well, I've got nothing bad to say about that person, which, on one level is true. On another level, the truth is we all have judgments that come up, and even if they're tiny, even if they're insignificant, like your feet or like, the funny collar going on or whatever, we all have these little judgments. And the more able we are for this exercise, I'm not saying necessarily go around and do this all the time, the more able we are to do this in this kind of context. It's like training. What's interesting though is sometimes it's hard for people to say something that is, that they don't like. And on the flip side, when we get to it, it's very easy for most of us to say things that we love about people, that are beautiful, that we feel like will uplift them, will also endear us to them. Interestingly though, some of us find it easier to hear what people don't like about us compared to what they do like about us, right? And that's interesting feedback or information for us too. Right? Ultimately, what we'd like and what we're creating is the ability that anybody can say anything, and we can not only feel fine and okay about ourselves, we can take it in and say, how is that true? How is that useful? Right? Because whatever anybody says about us, well, we've had a thought like that. In some moment, we could be like that. And if we're really fully human, we can empathize and connect with the energetics of that, even if we never participate in it. Meaning, somebody might say to me, Daniel, you're a thief. Daniel, you're a murderer. Well, you know what? I'm very careful about making sure I am honest. If somebody gives me the wrong change in a grocery store and it's too much, I count it back and give it back to them, and I pass that on to my daughter. We're very careful about that. And of course there are ways that I steal people's time, I talk too much, I don't consider, I show up late. These are ways of stealing, and yeah, I've done that. And sure, when I was a kid, I shoplifted at times before I learned how wrong, how unuseful that was, how unresourceful, how disrespectful, and for everybody, including myself. So I can relate to that. And murderer? Well, no, I've never murdered anybody, and I'm not one for physical violence. But you know what? I've had angry thoughts. I've had desires to hurt someone, and I've hurt people unconsciously. I can connect to that. So whenever we get feedback, we can say, oh, interesting. How is that true? In what way do I do that? Without beating ourselves up, without denigrating ourselves, without fighting against the other person, just take it in and say, oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. That gives me more choice, more options, more possibilities, more tools and equipment to feed the artistry of being a vibrant being. I'm grateful for it. Wow! This is meant to be a Facebook Live mini. Okay, geez, sorry. Well, or I hope it's been useful. I'm saying sorry to myself. I committed to Facebook Live minis. Well, could be longer, right? Anyway, I hope it has been useful. If you got questions, let me know. If you're interested in joining our sangha, where we talk about stuff like this and take it a lot deeper in with teachings like this and in live satsang or coaching sessions, then I'll put a little information below. It's growing, it's awesome. I'm delighted to get to learn from and share with and grow together with a community of vibrant beings. It's such a blessing. Thank you. All right, y'all. I'm Daniel. I'll see you later. I love you. Goodbye.